And welcome back. Since yesterday's video was a complete success, not in the fact that anybody actually watched it, but in the fact that I was able to actually record it and upload it, I'm gonna go for another one, and today is going to be a really fun one. But let's see what view we would like to see. We had this one yesterday. Let's do something new, because that's, I'm sure, what you can expect. What do you think? Yep, we'll have the train coming right at us. Yep, it's a good view, good view. We'll see London from the point of view of someone in front of the train. That works. So, we've got a fun question today on this one. This is 50 questions that Mormons can't answer. And this is question 2, and I'm going to be answering it. So, the question goes, since the time when Brigham Young taught that both the moon and the sun were inhabited by people, has the Mormon Church ever found scientific evidence of that to be true? Journal of Discourses, 1870, volume 13, page 271, etc., etc. So, I think to start out with this kind of explanation of what they're talking about, what's going on here, there's one point that I think a lot of people don't realize about prophets nowadays, because they're not used to having, a living prophet that communicates with God. Prophets are people too. They have the same limitations, they have the same knowledge limitations that people have, and they also express their own opinions. And in the case of a good chunk of Brigham Young's discourses, I should say, he's expressing his own personal opinion about certain things. And that could be the case in these two. I will be first to admit, so, okay, just to explain that a little better before I move on, prophets, unless they're speaking for the church or for the Lord specifically, they're expressing their own opinions. That's true of any prophet at any time, any place. They have their own lives, they have their own opinions based upon their experience. It's just how it works. So, to move on, it's been a while since I've read anything from Brigham Young's discourses, so my memory of them might be a little hazy, but I thought I'd go into a little bit more detail about these two claims. So, I do not remember the sun one specifically, but I'll go into more detail about that one in a second. The moon one, if I'm remembering correctly, it came up as part of a conversation, as, some things that people had asked him was, well, if there are people on the moon, would they still be children of God? Would they be protected by God and, repentance? Would they have all those advantages? And his answer was, if there were people on the moon, yes. That's my memory of it. I could be misremembering it or thinking of something different. It's entirely possible. So, the first thing, to kind of explain why that question would be asked, why it even comes up, this was written in 1870. Mid-19th century until early 1920s, 1930s, it was considered a real possibility that there could be life on the moon. And I'm not sure if it was ever entirely dismissed until, 69 when we landed on the moon? Or 68? 69, I think. So, it's about 100 years before we land on the moon. Most people considered it a real possibility, and it's entirely possible that Brigham Young thought, hey, there could be people on the moon. Considered it a viable theory. It's not specifically a church teaching that there are people on the moon. It was, in context, something he thought personally, and, in answer to the question, and I think it's still a valid question, if there's alien life out there in the universe, would they, have the same protection from God that we Earthlings do? It's a valid question to ask a prophet, and I think it's a valid answer, if I'm remembering correctly. No guarantee I am, but it's just an interesting side note. Now, what I find interesting is the people on the sun one. Now, I'm like I said, I do not remember this in his Journal of Discourses. However, there was an interesting theory that went around amongst church members. Now, I want to make this abundantly clear. This was a theory from church members. This wasn't an official church position. This wasn't a teaching of the church or anything like that. It's just, members of churches sometimes, think up their own theories to explain things in scriptures, or just have ideas about things in scriptures. It happens. And that's what this was. So our concept of heaven is a little bit different than everyone else's Not so much as not being heaven or being heaven, nothing like that. It's just we believe there are layers, there are levels to heaven that we call different kingdoms. Now, the highest kingdom of heaven, we believe, is called the celestial kingdom. Now, the metaphor that's used to describe the brightness and glory of the celestial kingdom is that it has the brightness and glory of the sun. So it's as bright and as glorified as the sun. And a theory came out that from the outside, from mortal eyes, people who haven't been glorified in the highest level of heaven, looking at it, the celestial kingdom would look like a sun. Would literally look like a sun. It'd be so bright we couldn't see the people, we couldn't see anything, but we could derive heat and sustenance and life just from being near it, like we do with the sun. So, like I said, that was just a theory. That's the only real connection I know of between, like, the idea that there could be life on the sun and the teachings of our church. So, like I said, I think a lot of Brigham Young's discourses are taken out of context, and when I know the context or I have a guess about the context, I'll explain that to you, and I'll throw out viable theories. Official position of the church is... Actually, the church hasn't made any official position on either of these things. They haven't said, well, there's life on the moon, well, there's no life on the moon, there's life on the sun, there's no life on the sun. They haven't said anything like that. It's never really come up, I don't think, except... in the context that I've already presented. So like I said, context matters in the journal discourses, and always keep in mind that prophets are people too, and they have their own opinions on things that's informed by the world around them. 1870 is very different than 2021. We know different things, we have more knowledge, we have different problems, different issues, so on and so forth. And it's always good to remember when something was said, the context of how it was said, and really, who they're talking to, why they're saying what they're saying. And I think that's important to understanding a lot of these questions, our religion. And I think these questions don't always, take into account, the subtleties, the distinctions, and the context, and so on and so forth. So it becomes kind of like ammo to prove Mormons wrong, as opposed to, I wonder what he actually meant when he said that. So, anyway, that's question number 2, the Sun People. Which sounds like a Doctor Who show, actually. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about this particular view. I think it's been kind of fun to watch. And like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video. Bye.